Oh, this really pisses me off. But go ahead. Really pisses me off. People think it's the census or something. I mean, this has got to...
Jerry Seinfeld built his entire life on precision. Every joke, every pause, every word had to land exactly where he wanted it. But now, at 71, that control is slipping in ways he never expected. His own children don't laugh the way audiences once did. Instead, they tilt their heads and ask, "Is that a bit?" As if their father can't communicate without a punchline. What once felt like mastery now feels like distance. Routines that once sharpened his mind have turned into rituals he can't break. Friends say he obsesses over tiny habits, repeating tasks until they feel perfect, even if no one else notices. And beneath the calm smile remains a question he never learned to joke his way out of. What happens when comedy's most disciplined mind realizes the world around him is changing faster than he can adjust? But the truth of how he became this way began long before fame ever entered the picture. Jerry Seinfeld wasn't shaped by glamour or spotlight, but by the quiet tension of two vastly different histories merging under one roof. His father, Kalman, had fled post-war Hungary carrying memories he rarely unpacked. He painted signs for a living, yet collected jokes like precious artifacts. His mother, Betty, came from a deep Syrian Jewish lineage, where storytelling wasn't entertainment, it was identity. Their worlds collided in a small Brooklyn apartment, where humor became the bridge between past wounds and new beginnings. Jerry absorbed it all, sensing that every raised eyebrow, every whispered family tale carried meaning. His father's war-forged wit, mixed with his mother's ancient cadence, created a household where jokes weren't throwaway lines. They were shields, tools, and sometimes unspoken truths. And for young Jerry, this atmosphere turned ordinary life into something far more instructive. Growing up in Massapequa, Jerry wasn't the loudest kid or the one grabbing attention. His sister Carolyn seemed to shine naturally, soaking up the praise Jerry quietly wished came his way. So he learned something that would define his entire life. If he couldn't win the room, he could study it. He became the silent observer at dinner tables, the kid who noticed which neighbor always waved too long or which teacher gave the same speech every Monday. Every detail became potential material. Humor wasn't just a hobby. It was armor against the feeling of being overlooked. When tensions rose, Jerry used jokes to flatten the mood, discovering he could shape emotions with timing alone. The irony was clear even then. The boy who felt invisible was slowly developing the ability to make the world look directly at him. But this new skill was only the beginning of an obsession no one saw coming. By 8, Jerry wasn't playing with toys, he was rehearsing punchlines in front of mirrors. While other kids memorized baseball cards, he memorized gestures, pauses, and micro-expressions. His room became a miniature laboratory where he tested the physics of laughter. Teachers found him disruptive. Classmates found him hilarious. But Jerry had no interest in being the class clown. He wanted mastery. He began keeping handwritten joke files, stacking pages of trial-and-error routines, like a young scientist charting experiments. This wasn't childish enthusiasm. It was the early rise of extreme discipline. Every failed joke became fuel. Every small laugh confirmed a pattern. Even then, Jerry wasn't guessing his way toward humor. He was engineering it. Still, the moment that pushed his humor from hobby to calling came from a place far from home. At 16, Jerry traveled to a kibbutz in Israel, expecting chores and boredom. Instead, he found something far more valuable: human contrast. He watched strangers from different countries argue about chores, spices, politics, and laundry like the world depended on it. Misunderstandings became comedy gold. One argument over a burnt light bulb stuck with him for years. He realized people didn't just fight. They staged dramas without knowing it. These small cultural collisions fascinated him, planting the idea that great humor came not from shocking events, but from the tiny frictions most people ignore. This trip broadened his world and sharpened his instincts, giving him a new lens to examine human behavior. But once he returned to the U.S., his path took a turn that would test whether all those observations could survive a real stage. College didn't slow Jerry down. It cornered him. After transferring to Queens College, he finally felt close enough to New York's comedy pulse to taste the life he wanted. But the stage didn't welcome him with open arms. His first real open mic was a disaster. Jokes he'd rehearsed for months fell flat in seconds. A few people chuckled politely. Most stared. He walked off shaking, wondering if everything he believed about himself was wrong. But that night, veteran comic Jay Leno pulled him aside and said something simple. Keep showing up. It wasn't praise. It was a challenge. Jerry realized bombing wasn't failure. It was tuition. He returned week after week, rewriting, rethinking, rebuilding. Those early defeats hardened him, shaping a performer who feared comfort more than humiliation. And the grind was only beginning. The next chapter forced him into a life most people would have quit instantly. After graduating, Jerry tried living a normal life. Temp jobs, routine hours, polite conversations. It lasted a week. Everything in him rejected it. So he walked away from security and plunged into the unstable world of nightly open mics. The pay was barely enough for food, and he spent countless nights on friends' couches, drifting from one cramped apartment to another. Crowds were unpredictable. Some nights, 5 people showed up. Other nights, the audience was so drunk he couldn't tell if they were laughing or yelling. But Jerry kept filing jokes, stacking notebooks, fine-tuning. Every breath and pause. His discipline turned into obsession. He wasn't just chasing laughs. He was chasing clarity. Each miserable gig sharpened his instincts. Each late-night rewrite carved him into the comic he was slowly becoming. Then came the moment that pushed him out of obscurity and into the national spotlight. By 1977, Jerry's precision was becoming impossible to ignore. Club owners who once dismissed him began offering longer sets. His timing tightened, his delivery sharpened, and his refusal to rely on cheap tricks set him apart. That's when Rodney Dangerfield noticed him. Out of nowhere, the comedy legend invited Jerry to appear on an HBO special. For a young comic barely surviving on pocket change, it felt like being launched through a secret door into an entirely different world. That single appearance introduced him to audiences far beyond New York. People suddenly knew his name. Bookers called. Clubs filled. For the first time, Jerry felt like the universe was opening a space for him. But Hollywood wasn't impressed. And the next blow nearly convinced him he didn't belong there at all. Just as Jerry's confidence began rising, Hollywood slapped him with a reminder he didn't fit their mold. During an audition for a sitcom role, a casting director told him bluntly he looked too ethnic, as if his face disqualified him from belonging on TV. The rejection stung deeper than he expected. But instead of chasing roles or changing his image, Jerry doubled down on the only thing he trusted: stand-up. He returned to the gritty clubs, night after night, refusing to let Hollywood's narrow standards reshape him. While others bent themselves into whatever the industry wanted, Jerry sharpened his authenticity. He turned rejection into fuel, reinforcing the voice that later defined him. And that stubborn authenticity led him to the moment that changed everything. The night Johnny Carson leaned forward and laughed. On May 6, 1981, Jerry walked onto the set of The Tonight Show, with his nerves coiled tight beneath his calm exterior. For comics, Johnny Carson wasn't a host. He was the gatekeeper. One laugh from him could rewrite a career. Jerry delivered a routine about the absurd rituals of everyday people, and something rare happened. Carson genuinely laughed. The audience leaned in. The timing, the confidence, the precision, they all clicked. Overnight, Jerry went from a New York regular to a national name. Bookings soared. TV spots rolled in. For the first time, his future didn't feel fragile. The world finally saw what he'd been sculpting in silence for years. But fame didn't erase his struggles. Behind the scenes, he was still one unexpected crisis away from losing everything. Despite the Carson breakthrough, Jerry's personal life was still hanging by a thread. The TV spots made him recognizable, but recognition didn't pay rent. His income swung wildly. One month he was performing for packed clubs. Next, he was struggling to cover basic bills. At one point, a bounced rent check pushed him so close to eviction that he pawned his watch just to stay afloat. It was a humiliating moment for someone the country assumed was made. But Jerry never told the public how thin the line felt between progress and collapse. Every dollar he earned went straight back into getting stage time, sharpening jokes, or surviving another week. He learned something painful but essential. Success and stability were not the same thing. Yet soon, a single TV moment would give him the credibility he desperately needed and bring a new creative force into his life. In 1987, Jerry landed his own HBO special, Stand Up Confidential. It wasn't just a performance, it was proof. Clubs treated him differently, producers approached him more seriously, and comics watched him with a mix of envy and admiration. But the most important thing that came from that year wasn't fame, it was meeting Larry David. They connected instantly, bonding over their shared obsession with the small irritations of daily life. They talked for hours about awkward conversations, bad restaurant service, and the absurd choreography of human behavior. Neither realized it then, but this strange, hyper-detailed friendship would become the foundation for something that would reshape TV forever. And soon, an idea both brilliant and bizarre would take shape, a concept no network wanted to touch. When Jerry and Larry pitched their idea to NBC, they didn't bring dramatic arcs, chase scenes, or emotional speeches. They brought the mundane, the tiny irritations, the awkward pauses. Executives stared at them, confused. "What's the show about?" someone asked. Jerry answered, "It's about nothing." It sounded ridiculous, even to them. After the lukewarm pilot for the Seinfeld Chronicles, NBC practically buried the idea. Test audiences didn't get it. Surveys said it lacked plot, heart, and direction. Everything pointed to cancellation. But one NBC executive, Rick Ludwin, believed in it so fiercely that he secretly took funds from another project to give Jerry and Larry 4 more episodes. It was a gamble that almost cost him his job, and those 4 episodes would change television in ways no one could have predicted. The early days of Seinfeld were far from glamorous. Ratings were weak, critics were indifferent, and NBC executives doubted every creative choice Jerry made. They wanted broader jokes, simpler characters, bigger storylines, but Jerry refused. He believed the show's strength came from its smallness, its awkward honesty, its everyday realism. He didn't bend, he didn't compromise. And behind the scenes, he worked harder than anyone. He pored over scripts until early morning, rewriting lines, trimming dialogue, sharpening beats. Slowly, viewers started discovering the show, first in late-night reruns, then through word of mouth. The audience grew organically, episode by episode, and the momentum truly shifted the moment Jerry turned normal life into iconic comedy with a character based on a real New York figure. Jerry was eating at a strict New York soup shop one afternoon when the owner's bizarre rules and explosive temper caught his attention. Most people walked out annoyed. Jerry walked out inspired. That experience became the blueprint for the Soup Nazi, one of the most famous episodes in TV history. It was a turning point. Audiences suddenly recognized something special in Seinfeld. It exaggerated real life just enough to expose its absurdity. People quoted the episode everywhere. The real shop owner, furious at his unexpected fame, even kicked Jerry out later for mocking him. But the magic was undeniable. The show had found its rhythm, and Jerry had found the formula. Amplify the everyday until it becomes unforgettable. What came next pushed Jerry from rising star to unstoppable force, giving him a level of control rarely seen in television. As Seinfeld entered its third season, Jerry's influence behind the scenes intensified. He wasn't just the star, he was becoming the engine. Scripts often changed minutes before filming, and Jerry pushed writers to dissect every line until the rhythm felt mathematically precise. While other actors took breaks, Jerry paced the hallways, rereading jokes, trimming syllables, studying breath patterns like a surgeon preparing for a delicate operation. Crew members whispered about his intensity, calling him polite but emotionally distant. Someone so focused on the craft, he rarely noticed the chaos around him. But his perfectionism paid off. By the time season 3 ended, ratings finally surged. The show broke into the top 10, surprising executives who once doubted it entirely. Audiences connected deeply with its hyper-specific, painfully honest humor. But Jerry wasn't satisfied. He wanted to push boundaries even further. And the next episode would ignite a cultural shift no one expected. The idea for The Contest came straight from Larry David's real life, a risky topic no network wanted to touch. Jerry knew it was dangerous. You couldn't say the word, you couldn't show anything explicit, and one wrong tone could sink the series. But he also knew the premise was lightning in a bottle. So he and Larry crafted a script built on euphemisms and tension, dancing around the subject with surgical precision. Phrases like "master of my domain" entered the cultural bloodstream overnight. The episode pulled nearly 19 million viewers during its first run, then passed 20 million on reruns. Critics called it bold without being reckless, daring without stepping over forbidden lines. Jerry had proven that a show built on the smallest human quirks could still dominate national conversation. But the real chaos hit a year later, when the writers' strike threatened to shut everything down, forcing Jerry into an unpredictable creative corner. With the writers' strike halting production, Seinfeld faced a crisis most shows couldn't survive. Scripts dried up, storylines stalled, tension rose across the set. But Jerry refused to let the momentum die. Leaning on his stand-up instincts, he encouraged looser performances, spontaneous lines, and risky transitions. The show gained a raw, unfiltered quality that unexpectedly drew viewers in. During this period came one of the show's most iconic moments, George Costanza's monologue about saving a beached whale. The punchline, involving a golf ball lodged in its blowhole, was literally invented by Jerry the morning of filming. Jason Alexander had mere minutes to learn the speech. Somehow, under pressure, everything clicked. The scene became one of the most replayed moments in sitcom history. And as the strike ended, Jerry emerged not just as a comic, but as the quiet architect of a cultural empire ready for its peak. By the mid-1990s, Jerry Seinfeld reached a level of influence few performers ever experience. NBC, terrified of losing its golden series, offered him a staggering $1 million per episode, the highest salary in television at the time. Production costs soared, but ratings soared even higher. Jerry wasn't simply an actor. He had become an institution, shaping every creative decision. Behind the scenes, he pushed for tighter scripts, sharper edits, and bolder stories. Critics compared the show's precision to a symphony, each episode conducted by Jerry's unwavering standards. Syndication deals were already lining up, promising unimaginable wealth. Yet Jerry didn't chase luxury or status. He chased efficiency, clarity, and control. Friends joked he treated comedy like engineering. But as the spotlight intensified and success peaked, Jerry faced a challenge no one saw coming: the ending of a phenomenon that felt too big to stop. When Jerry announced that Seinfeld would end in 1998, the entertainment world froze. Most shows die from declining ratings, but Seinfeld was at its peak. 76 million people tuned in for the finale. Advertisers paid $1 million for a single 30-second slot. Fans expected a triumphant send-off. Instead, Jerry chose a morally twisted conclusion. The gang goes to jail. It was bold, cynical, and completely unexpected. Critics shredded it. Fans argued for years. Some called it brilliant. Others called it a betrayal. But Jerry didn't flinch. He believed endings should reflect truth, not fantasy, and the characters' selfishness had finally caught up with them. After the finale, syndication checks began rolling in at levels no comedian had ever experienced. Jerry earned over $260 million that same year alone. But as the show faded to black, Jerry faced a quieter question. Without the sitcom, who was he now? When Seinfeld ended, Jerry stepped into a silence he hadn't felt in nearly a decade. The world expected him to launch another show immediately. Something bigger, sharper, or funnier. But Jerry didn't want another sitcom. He wanted to return to the beginning, to the raw fear of a microphone and an unfiltered crowd. What surprised him most was how rusty he felt. For years, he'd been protected by writers' rooms, studio audiences, and the safety net of a cultural phenomenon. Now, he stood alone again, shaking before small crowds in clubs far less glamorous than the soundstages he'd ruled. Documentaries like Comedian exposed a vulnerable side of him, an anxious, doubtful performer dismantling his entire act just to rebuild it from scratch. Then, a new controversy hit. Comedian Bill Kirschenbaum accused him of stealing a joke. They settled privately, but the sting lingered. And as he rebuilt, Jerry realized his influence wasn't fading. It was evolving into something more unpredictable. Jerry didn't chase Hollywood roles or headline blockbusters. Instead, he redefined his voice through reinvention. In 2007, he surprised everyone with B-Movie, an oddball animated comedy that went viral years later and became an internet meme factory. But his next reinvention was far bolder. Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. A simple concept. Two people in a vintage car cracking jokes over lattes became a cultural hit. The episode with President Barack Obama broke the internet, drawing millions of viewers curious to see a sitting president banter casually with a comic legend. Suddenly, Jerry wasn't just a sitcom icon. He was a bridge between generations. The subtle power shift was clear. People didn't just watch him for jokes anymore. They watched him because his presence made conversations feel sharper, cooler, and oddly intimate. But nostalgia alone couldn't shield him from a new wave of scrutiny that followed him everywhere. Jerry's return to the stage in the 2017 Netflix special, Jerry Before Seinfeld, felt like watching someone step inside a time machine. The small club, the yellow legal pads from the 1970s, the raw early jokes. Everything felt stripped down, almost fragile. Fans loved it. Critics said he'd finally shown a side of himself that didn't hide behind precision. Then came Unfrosted in 2024, a chaotic, fictionalized Pop-Tart origin story that shocked viewers by becoming a massive streaming hit despite its absurdity. Jerry leaned into surreal humor, turning breakfast food into corporate warfare, complete with sabotage and fake congressional hearings. Younger audiences discovered him for the first time, drawn to the randomness and unpredictability. But the shift revealed something deeper. Jerry was experimenting in ways he never dared during his sitcom years. Still, the louder he became creatively, the more questions resurfaced about the quieter parts of his personal life. Jerry's controversies didn't fade with age. They resurfaced in cycles. The relationship with Shoshana Lonstein, which began when she was 17 and he was 39, drew fresh criticism as modern audiences revisited the timeline with sharper eyes. Then there was Jessica Sklar, who met Jerry just weeks after returning from her honeymoon. Her husband accused her of betrayal as she transitioned rapidly into Jerry's life. Jerry called it fate. Others called it messy. In 2014, his offhand comment about possibly being on the autism spectrum sparked debates he never intended to ignite. Autism advocates questioned the self-diagnosis. Fans wondered if it explained his strict routines. And then the viral moment with Kesha, her arms open, Jerry retreating repeatedly, made him look cold, even arrogant. Yet behind these public storms, he quietly donated millions to autism research and children's welfare through his foundation. But beneath the wealth, controversies, and careful control remained a man still struggling with the most human battle of all: connection. Today, Jerry Seinfeld stands on the edge of 2026, preparing for a world tour called Laughing Matters, selling out arenas before rehearsals even begin. His net worth hovers near $1 billion, powered by a syndication empire that generates money every time someone watches even a few minutes of Seinfeld. Yet the irony of his life grows sharper with age. He can write jokes with scientific accuracy, rewrite one bit 80 times, and shape television history. But at home, his kids don't think he's funny anymore. They ask, "Is that a bit?" And Jerry quietly wonders when the line between real life and performance blurred. He preaches that struggle builds character, that perfection is a poison, and that grounding comes from late-night cereal instead of elaborate vacations. But even with all his control, all his clarity, one truth remains. Jerry mastered the art of observing humanity, while never fully knowing how to be understood by it. And that final contradiction is the part of his story the cameras never captured.